James flinched as Diep slammed her phone onto the wooden table. The screen cracked, distorting the photo displayed. James standing in a pawn shop, handing car keys to a dealer. Outside, the wind howled. Inside, the silence was suffocating. "Liar," Diep whispered. The word was a blade. James stood near the door, mud from his run drying on his shoes. He wanted to explain, but seeing Diep's betrayed face, he knew lies wouldn't work. "Don't," she hissed, tears spilling. "Don't tell me the AC broke. Look at this photo. You sold it. You sold your car to Tuan the shark." "I had to," James shouted, desperation cracking his voice. "My accounts are frozen. My father cut me off. I had zero dong, Diep. Zero." Diep stared at him, horror dawning. "So the money for the wood?" "It was the car money," James admitted, stepping forward. "It was all I had left. I couldn't let you lose the contract." "You fool," Diep choked out, backing away. "You sold your dignity. For me? Do you think I wanted that?" Boom! A deafening thunderclap shook the house. The lights died. Total darkness. "Mommy!" Nee's terrified scream pierced the dark from the bedroom. "Nye!" Diep abandoned the argument, rushing toward the sound. James followed with his phone flashlight. The bedroom was chaotic. The window shutters had blown open, banging violently. Rain lashed in, soaking the bed where Nye curled up screaming. James threw his weight against the shutters, fighting the gale. It felt like pushing a stone wall. He gritted his teeth, forcing the wood shut. "Latch! Damn it!" he roared. With a heave, he slammed the latch. The wind cut off, but a terrifying rattle remained above. Drip! Drip! Splash! James swung the light up. The roof, a rivet, popped like a gunshot. Muddy water poured onto the floor. Diep wrapped Nye in a blanket. "The roof is lifting," she cried. "James, the sheet is going to fly." "Get under the dining table," James ordered. "Go, now." He ushered them into the living room. Diep huddled under the heavy table with Nye. James ran to place buckets under the leaks. But as he emptied a bucket out the back door, lightning illuminated the valley. James froze. The workshop, built on low ground next to the stream. In the flash, James saw something that stopped his heart. The water wasn't in the stream. It was black, churning, and rising fast. James slammed the door and spun around. "The wood!" he gasped. Diep looked up from under the table. "What?" "The timber!" James yelled. "The 300 million! It's in the drying yard. The water is rising. If it reaches the stacks, everything is gone." Diep's face went pale. "James, no, it's a typhoon." "That wood is your life," James shouted, grabbing a raincoat. "I didn't sell my car to watch your future float away. I promised to save it." "James, stop!" Diep screamed, scrambling out. He didn't listen. He pushed the door and sprinted into the night. The storm hit him like a physical blow. Rain stung like needles. The path to the workshop was a river of mud. James slipped, sliding down the slope, scraping his elbows, but he scrambled up. He had to reach the yard. He arrived at the workshop. A nightmare. The stream had burst its banks. Black water lapped at the bottom of the wood stacks, the precious timber representing his sacrifice. "No, no, no!" James yelled. He grabbed a heavy canvas tarp, trying to pull it over the exposed wood. The wind caught it like a sail, ripping it from his hands and knocking him into the mud. "James!" He turned. Diep was there. She hadn't stayed behind. She was soaking wet, fighting her way toward him. "You idiot!" she screamed, grabbing the other end of the tarp. "Pull!" Together they fought the storm. Two tiny figures against nature. They dragged heavy logs to weigh down edges. They threw cinder blocks. They slipped in the rising water, screaming instructions swallowed by the gale. "One more stack!" James roared. "The main shipment!" They lunged for the final pile. The water was up to their shins, cold and pulling hard. They threw the tarp over. James jumped on top to pin it down. Diep handed him a rock. "Got it," James yelled, jumping down. "It's secure." They collapsed against the wood stack, gasping, clutching each other. Looking at the covered piles, they thought they had won. They thought sacrifice was enough. Then the ground growled. It wasn't thunder. It was a deep vibration from the earth, a monster waking up. James froze. He knew that sound. He shone his light up the mountain slope. The trees were moving, sliding. The entire face of the mountain was liquefying into a wall of mud. "Run!" James whispered. Diep looked at him, confused. "What?" James grabbed her arm, bruising it. "Run! Now!" He dragged her sideways toward the high ridge of the road, away from the slope. They scrambled up the muddy bank, digging into wet earth. Diep slipped. James yanked her up, throwing her forward. "Don't look back! Go!" The sound was apocalyptic, the earth tearing itself apart. James dove, tackling Diep to the ground on the high bank. He covered her head with his arms. A massive wall of mud, rocks, and trees crashed down. It didn't just hit the workshop, it erased it. The sound of twisting metal and crushing concrete filled the air. 10 seconds of total destruction. Then, silence. Only rain. James slowly lifted his head, shaking. He shone the light down into the valley. The workshop was gone. The drying yard was gone. The tarps, the 300 million dong worth of wood, the car money, all buried under tons of mud. Diep sat up. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She just stared, eyes empty. "My workshop," she whispered. James pointed the light frantically, searching for a sign. Anything, nothing, just a river of black mud. He fell to his knees. He looked at his hands, bleeding, muddy, empty. He had lost the car. He had lost the money. And now, despite risking their lives, nature had taken the last thing he had left. The rain slowed to a drizzle, but the silence that followed was louder than the storm. James stood at the edge of the ravine. His flashlight beam cut through the dark, revealing only a churning river of black mud where the workshop used to be. "No," James whispered. He scrambled down the muddy bank, slipping and sliding. He fell to his knees in the muck and began to dig. He dug with his bare hands, clawing at the earth like a madman. "It has to be here," James shouted, his voice cracking. 300 million. It can't just disappear." "James," Diep cried from the bank. "Stop! It's gone!" "I can find it," James yelled back, not looking at her. He pulled at a submerged branch, hoping it was a log of expensive timber. It was just a broken tree limb. He threw it aside and kept digging, his fingernails tearing, mud filling the cuts on his hands. "I promised you! I promised!" Diep slid down the bank. She grabbed his shoulders, trying to pull him back. He fought her, his strength fueled by pure desperation. "James, look at me!" she screamed, shaking him hard. "Stop it! Look at me!" James froze. He turned to her. His face was streaked with mud and tears, his eyes wild. "I lost it," he choked out. "I sold the car. I lied to you. And now, I lost the money too. I have nothing left, Diep. I'm useless." Diep pulled him into a hug, holding him tight as he shook. "You are not useless," she said fiercely. "You are alive. That is all that matters. If the landslide had taken you, that would be the end of my world." They knelt there in the mud, holding on to each other because there was nothing else left to hold. The morning sun rose bright and cruel, illuminating the destruction in high definition. James stepped out of the house. The village was already awake. People were gathering near the site of the landslide, pointing and whispering. "Look at the workshop," a neighbor whispered, loud enough for James to hear. "Completely erased." "And look at him," another voice added, gesturing at James. "The city boy. They say he sold his car yesterday to pay for that wood. Now look, no car, no wood. What a waste." James tightened his jaw. He walked past them, head down. He went to the site. It looked even worse in the daylight. The structure was twisted metal and splintered beams jutting out of the mud like broken bones. He stood there, doing the math in his head. Construction costs, machinery replacement, the debt to the supplier. It was impossible. They were finished. Diep came up beside him, holding Nee's hand. She looked pale, dark circles under her eyes. "Where is the workshop, Mommy?" Nee asked, clutching her teddy bear. "It went away, baby," Diep said, her voice trembling. "The mountain took it. Will it come back?" Diep didn't answer. She couldn't. Suddenly a sound cut through the morning air. Not a truck, not a tractor. It was the smooth, purring hum of a V12 engine. The villagers turned. James turned. A black Bentley was navigating the muddy road. It looked like a spaceship that had landed in the wrong century. It stopped right in front of the ruined workshop. The driver's door opened. A man in a sharp black suit stepped out. He wore sunglasses and leather gloves. He didn't look at the villagers. He walked straight toward James, stepping carefully over the puddles. James recognized him immediately. Vance, his father's personal assistant, the cleaner. Diep gripped James's arm. "Who is that?" she whispered, fear rising. "Trouble," James said. Vance stopped 3 feet away. He looked at James, at his muddy trousers, his ruined shirt, his unshaven face. He didn't sneer. He just looked disappointed. "Mr. James," Vance said. His voice was calm, detached. "Your mother told us you missed the deadline." "I made my choice, Vance," James said, stepping in front of Diep. "Go away." Vance took off his sunglasses. He glanced at the ruined workshop, then at the landslide. "The chairman, your father, anticipated you might be stubborn," Vance said. "He also anticipated this." He gestured to the mud. "He knows about the loss. He knows you are bankrupt. You have zero assets. You have significant debt, and you are dragging this poor woman down with you." Diep flinched. Vance reached into his jacket pocket. He pulled out a white envelope. "The chairman is offering a lifeline," Vance said, extending the envelope. "Inside is a plane ticket to New York, departing tonight, and a check, enough to cover the debts of this workshop, plus extra for the lady, for her trouble." James stared at the envelope. It was the solution. He could pay the debt. He could save Diep's reputation. He could fix the mess he had made. All he had to do was leave. "James," Diep whispered. She understood. Vance took a step closer. "Look at her, James. Look at the mud. You can't help her here. You are not a carpenter. You are a CEO. You are destroying her life by playing pretend. Take the money, save her, and come home." James looked at the check. Then he looked at Diep. Her eyes were filled with tears. She didn't tell him to stay. She loved him enough to let him go if it meant saving him. James reached out his hand. His fingers brushed the envelope. Vance smiled, a small victorious twitch. "Smart choice." James grabbed the envelope. He held it for a second. Then slowly, deliberately, James tore the envelope in half. "Rip." Vance's smile vanished. The villagers gasped. Diep covered her mouth. James tore it again and again until the check and the ticket were confetti. He threw the pieces into the mud. "Tell my father," James said, his voice low and dangerous, "that I am not playing pretend. And tell him my family is not for sale." Vance stared at the torn paper. His face hardened. He put his sunglasses back on. "You are making a mistake, James. A fatal one." "It's my mistake to make," James replied. Vance turned on his heel and walked back to the Bentley. The car reversed and drove away. James stood there, breathing hard. He had just thrown away their only lifeline. He turned to Diep, terrified. Diep looked at the paper in the mud. Then she looked at James. She walked up to him, took his muddy hand, and squeezed it hard. "We have no money," she said softly. "No," James agreed. "We have no workshop." "No, But, she said, looking into his eyes with a fire the storm couldn't extinguish, we have you.
James bị Diệp phát hiện đã bán xe để lấy tiền mua gỗ của mình. Phim bị phong tỏa, cuộc cãi vã chưa kịp lắng thì bão ập đến. Nhà dột như hoảng sợ, thấy nước lũ dâng nhanh, James lao ra xưởng gỗ để cứu số gỗ giá trị 300 triệu. Toàn bộ hy sinh cuối cùng của anh, Diệp không bỏ mặt, cùng James chống chọi giữa mưa gió, nhưng sạt lở núi bất ngờ cuốn phăng xưởng và tất cả. Sáng hôm sau, họ đối diện ánh nhìn thương hại của dân làng. Khi tuyệt vọng nhất, trợ lý của cha James xuất hiện, đưa vé máy bay và tiền để rời đi. James xé nát phong bì, từ chối quay về, không tiền, không xưởng, nhưng họ còn